Hey everyone, today we're ranking all of the Dead by Daylight killer weapons from worst to best. This is going to be for their basic attack weapons, and they'll be ranked in terms of their visuals, design, and links into the character who wield them and their lore. I might do a least to most lethal weapons list too at some point also. Let me know if you'd be interested in something like that. Let's get into it. I know everyone's going to hate me for this, but I'm putting Myers in last place. With his simplistic kitchen knife. It's fitting for his character, but I mean visually this thing is just a kitchen knife, which I think really tanks the rating for it. The idea of having the embodiment of evil wield a simple kitchen utensil is really interesting, but there still isn't anything that really sets this apart aside the lack of uniqueness, I guess. I mean, go look in your kitchen, these things are everywhere. Next we have the Legion's hunting knife, which again is just a regular looking knife that you could reasonably see anyone holding. Similar to shape though, it does play into their whole vibe of being fairly physically normal people, and so getting their weapon from basically wherever they can, and so opting for hunting knives. Obviously we're just going off of the basic knife for this, but potentially with the inclusion of Susie's ruler knife that she scrapped together, then they'd be a little higher, as that to me has a lot more personality. The Huntress's weapon is her broadaxe, and similar to the two previous knives, it's quite basic looking, and basically just a regular axe. There's no particular flair or anything to make it unique to Huntress. I do like however that it looks a bit scuffed and, well, used basically, showing the years that Anna has been out in the woods swinging this thing. To follow this up we have the Ghostface's tactical knife, which fits his character well. But same situation here of it just being a slightly more stylized and specific type of knife. A knife's a knife though, and definitely one of the more boring weapon types in DBD. But this specific kind fitting the Ghostface ups the ranking a little bit for me. Especially due to this original iteration of Ghostface being a more tactical and strategic one. I like this choice of weapon. The Sledge is Bubba's weapon, and is essentially just a cattle hammer used to stun the cattle. This is definitely fitting for him as a character, but largely the weapon is quite visually based. You do get cool sounds with this weapon though, like the big thuds and squelches when you land a swing. Gross and brutal. Following this we have the hammer for Hillbilly, which is essentially a cattle hammer too, except it's a bit worse for wear. It's a bit larger and has much more detail, and generally is more specific to Hillbilly and his quite thrown together appearance. I do like this kind of cobbled together aspect of it, and it definitely adds more personality to an otherwise simplistic weapon. The Pig's hidden blade is a very cool weapon, but it is also somewhat generic I guess, with this kind of weapon being used in many different properties aside saw. It is great still, with a few extra features like the fact it can be hidden and slid up into the pig's sleeve. Again though, it just looks a bit basic, being a thin and mostly uninteresting looking blade, and its appearance doesn't immediately make you think of the pig. For Clown we have another knife, although a slightly more interesting one with a few more animations and cool flips and stuff. It also has a name, Madame Butterfly, presumably named after a victim of the clowns, which I guess adds a little more depth to this and does make it a bit more unique and slightly more interesting as a weapon. This knife also has a bit more texture than a lot of the others, and generally is just a bit more interesting to look at. Next we have Demogorgon's Barbarous claws. These are quite cool and are first out of the killers who basically use a body part as their basic attack weapon. This fits the demo in the sense that it's literally a part of it. It's this distorted, twisted humanoid hand with long sharp claws with unnerving alien skin. For the sole reason that it's just visually different from many of the more basic knives in common weapons, it's kinda cool. The Nemesis's weapon is his fists. These you could argue are truly the most basic weapon, as they're literally just a pair of oversized hands. However, there is something quite unique about a character using their fists, especially when those fists are these big meaty lumps distorted by the different experiments done to Nemesis, resulting in this fleshy coloured skin, and for them to be wrapped in this sturdy material. This is debatable for sure, but I personally really like just the straight up fists used for Nemesis, and I think it's quite unique. The Doctor's stick is certainly a suitable weapon for someone so twisted. The stick does have a cool design with all of the spikes and electric current coursing through it. It is just a bat though, and a bat isn't exactly the most unique of weapons. It's visually well designed though and fitting, so overall I'm pretty neutral on this one. Although Nurse's Bonesaw is a very simple and regular weapon or tool, I like it because of how well it reflects the nurse as a character. She uses a precise weapon for cutting instead of a bulkier and more brutal knife. There's a greater elegance to this weapon, even if it's still incredibly brutal. It fits in with the rest of her image of seeming weakness but actually having quite substantial power. It's more of a tool than a typical weapon, which I like a lot for the nurse. The Yamaoka Blade is the Oni's weapon, and one that is, to be fair, just a katana. However, it is more of a family heirloom, even if it does basically just look like a katana. But hey, katanas are cool at the end of the day. I also like that this was originally on the Yamaoka estate map at the Oni shrine, but disappeared once the Oni was released. That's a nice little link to the history of the blade itself, and where it went after the Oni's demise, and where it is now after his return. The Trapper's Cleaver is a very cool weapon that's made up of different parts of metal fused together, made by the Trapper himself and from the metals of the Macmillan estate mines. I like the backstory behind this, and it visually is very fitting for Trapper's rough appearance, although it still is quite a simple design and machete-esque. Despite this, I think it's just such a great fit for Trapper and seems like something he would actually create. The Hag has a similar situation to Demo with her claw. This is a large distorted hand that has these huge claws, some of the fingers fused together and the tips pointed and sharp. It's described in game as an overgrown deformity that pushes through the Hag's flesh and bone, which is super gross, and presumably a result of the hexes and their magic. Lower down her arm where it's connected, it's held together by some kind of cloth wrapped around that seems to hold it on, which is a cool touch. In a similar fashion to Trapper, we have the Blade of Marseille for the twins. This is a thrown together weapon, or more of an adapted sickle, with different things like nails and such stabbing through. Everything about this has been through lots of wear and tear, but it still looks solid and quite brutal, which reflects the twins and their resilience and also journey quite well. I also like the unique shape of this weapon, quite simply. The Plague's Profane Censer isn't exactly the most practical of weapons, but it is quite a cool looking one and certainly unique and very fitting for the Plague. She uses this censer in the lore to hide the stink of the Plague from her followers as she slowly dies from it. It's also just very intricate and has a cool design with the incense burning within it, further with the chain wrapping around her arm as the censer hangs down. It is still just a censer though at the end of the day, but I do really like how it was made into a weapon and the story behind it. The hook and chain for the Cenobite are pretty cool and fit well with his character, who's kinda into chains. This one is also cool just due to how it's used, being whipped around and coming in and out of portals. The chain itself is, I guess, quite a regular chain with a hook on the end, but a bit like Plague Censer, it's more the uniqueness of this, I guess. It's a bit different from the majority who just have some form of knife. Pyramid Head's weapon of choice is the Great Knife, and oh boy is it a good weapon, and certainly the outlier for the knife-wielding killers. It is impractical, but fitting for Pyramid Head's role as executioner and a sight to see as a survivor when fleeing him. This is essentially just an oversized knife, but I guess it's the size really that sets it apart from the regular knives, as it just adds a bunch more personality and says a lot about the guy wielding it. I love the fear factor it creates as it's slowly dragged along the ground. Freddy's Claw Glove is definitely one of those weapons in horror which is very iconic, but also quite specific to Freddy. When you see the Claw Glove, you think of him. Again, unlike Myers with the kitchen knife, you could show someone a kitchen knife and ask them who it reminds them of, and they might say someone like Gordon Ramsay instead. I don't know. Show them this Claw Glove, and it would be Freddy Krueger. This weapon is handmade by Freddy, making it all the more unique to him, and features cool animations like him shaking the claws, which results in this eerie metal on metal sound. Very unique and generally quite a chilling weapon. Next we have Deathslinger's rifle, the Redeemer. He's maybe cheating a little bit here because this weapon also doubles up as his power. But hey, this weapon is really cool. This is a specialized creation of the Slinger himself and made to capture different outlaws. It shoots out a spear and is equipped with a bayonet at the end for close quarters. It's made out of rough metal but appears sturdy and harsh. Very fitting for Slinger and a really great overall design. The Blight's Bonebuster is a very unique looking cane that I think fits in really well with Blight's overall look. It's this crooked cane with intricate metalwork at the top, and there's like this creepy eye in there too. This is a great addition to the Blight and outlines his prior life and sanity, contrasted with the now crookedness of the cane and his current insanity. It's like a clash of the before and after in one weapon. As an original creation of behavior, the Azarov skull is a great weapon for the Wraith, and works even better when considering its usage to ring his wailing bell. Wraith's weapon houses the skull and spine of his boss Azarov, owner of Autohaven Wreckers. This weapon feels powerful not only in the sense of it looking sturdy and likely to cause injury, but also because it represents the Wraith and the lengths he ended up going to as a result of always falling into to chaos and trauma. The skull his weapon houses was the reason he was responsible for the crushing of hundreds, and now he carries it around with him to inflict pain himself. The polished head smasher is Trickster's weapon and is essentially a neon baseball bat with a razor blade attached. This thing is incredibly cool looking and fits the Trickster's aesthetic perfectly, reflecting his character well. It also comes with some amazing sound effects when swung, and generally it's just one of the most dynamic weapons with glowing parts and a very distinct visual style. I may be a bit biased and won easily over by the lightsaber sounds. Finally, we have the Spirit's Shattered Katana. A lot like Oni, this is cool to begin with just because it's a katana. This weapon holds so much more weight over Oni's though, as a weapon essentially responsible for the Spirit's death. Like Wraith's axe, this weapon represents the torment of Rin's prior life. She wields this with vengeance in mind, the pieces of the katana forming together with some kind of magic, shattered previously after the blows dealt to her by her father. The shattered look is something that largely relates to Spirit, so the use of this katana is very powerful, and just visually looks great too. It has cool features also, like how it forges together when swung and then retracts just into a shard that cuts through the Spirit's hand. Amazing in every way. Alright, well that's gonna do it. I do hope you enjoyed, and please do drop your own list or thoughts down below. Thanks, and goodbye.